Welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 13. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we're talking demonic beings and how they attach to objects that have been infected with negative energetic imprints and what it does to the people who live around these objects. I'm going to share a recent story about a large green armchair that Elizabeth brought into her home and the big secret that it held, and how the energy within that chair affected her and her family. And I also have an interesting experience of my own to share about a very old deck of second-hand tarot cards that were inhabited with dark beings and their dastardly intentions. Now let's get into Elizabeth's story. And I have to say that I have known Elizabeth and her family for a very long time. And as I walked into her lounge room one day, I noticed a new chair had been placed, pride of place, opposite the television. And I just took notice of that chair as I walked through the lounge room into the kitchen where we were going to sit and have a cup of tea and just have a chat. And Elizabeth sat opposite me. And directly behind her was this very large, sort of emerald green, very comfortable looking armchair. And as Elizabeth's talking to me, I kept looking past her as my paranormal radar was picking up something unusual about that chair. And as she finished speaking to have a sip of her coffee, I just said to her, "Look, is that chair new? I haven't seen it before." And she was like, "Yeah, we found it on a second-hand website. And the husband thought it would be a great gaming chair. So we went and got it and brought it home." Now, I don't very often blurt out about my paranormal suspicions about pieces of furniture. I'll often observe them, see how people interact with them, and see whether I actually need to step in and offer assistance. So I just left it at that for the rest of the afternoon. But every time I looked at that chair, I just knew there was something off about it. It just made me feel unwell. It got my heart palpitating in such a way that I'm like, yeah, there's something attached to that chair. I'm going to have to talk to Elizabeth about that. And my dislike for the chair made sense when Elizabeth mentioned recent violent changes in her behaviour and how her children's sleep was disturbed and she and her partner were struggling to get a full night's sleep. Now, as she's talking, I kind of interrupted, which is one of my bad habits. I interrupted her mid-sentence and said, "Did this all start to go downhill when that chair came into the house?" And I'm pointing at that chair. And she kind of looked at me strangely, and I could see her mind sort of ticking over and calculating if the time frame was accurate. "Yeah," she said, slowly, as she looked at me in a kind of astonished way. Now, Elizabeth and her family are used to my paranormal talk, as I have done lots of energetic clearing work for them over the years. And she didn't even think to get the chair energetically checked before bringing it into the home. But now it was all starting to make sense with the strange changes in behaviours, the sleep disruption, and her explosive outbursts, which were totally out of character. So she agreed to let me look at the chair. She sent me a photo of the chair that night when I got home, and the following day I set to work tuning in, as I call it, to see what was lurking within that mysterious green chair. Now, after I did that clearing for Elizabeth, which I'm going to share with you what I found, but I would like to read this email first that Elizabeth wrote to me about a week after I'd energetically cleared that chair for her. I wanted to say thank you for the wonderful job you did recently on that item of furniture. I initially found a picture of that chair listed on an online for sale site and decided to show my partner who wanted to purchase it. So we brought the chair home within 2 days and put it in our living room. We then went out again for a few hours, and when we came back home, I felt a sudden, heavy, confronting energy as I stood in our lounge room. I felt an instant state of overwhelm as I looked at that chair. I tried not to judge the chair on my first feelings. It was a lovely emerald green colour, but yet it looked so much darker than when I first went to purchase it with my partner. Prior to us leaving the home to purchase the chair, and in the days leading up to the purchase, my home did not feel like this. It felt calm and peaceful as always, she writes in her email. Over the coming weeks that the chair was in the house, I realised that I just did not even want it in the house. I did not want to sit in it. It made me feel extremely uncomfortable. And respectfully, it was my partner's. But I didn't even want to sit in it when he was at work. I just felt like I wasn't able to. And when I sat near the chair, I realised I was argumentative with my partner and would ruminate over things constantly, which is not one of my normal behaviours. Now, when I do some daily exercise, I usually do it in the lounge room where I have my exercise bike. But the exercise bike was located next to this chair. And I just didn't want to do my exercise in that room. And when I woke up, which was frequently during the night, and she's got unusual written in brackets, I would have a lot of thoughts flooding into my mind, which felt like a whirlwind of emotions, and I found it hard to rationalise them. I consider myself quite sound of mind and have been successful for a good part of my life in directing my thoughts effectively. But I found my thoughts getting busier since I brought that chair into the house. And I didn't want to think much of it because other things were going on in my life at that same time, daily stresses that could equally contribute to me feeling a bit caught off guard. So she's written, I pushed on regardlessly and could feel strange happenings in the house, things being misplaced when I'm normally very organised. I found I was becoming forgetful and I just wanted to go to bed earlier and earlier as I was so tired. And I ended up finding that I was fighting with my partner over seemingly trivial matters. I soon thought there must be something else going on. So when I wasn't at home, I was fine with my partner. We got along really well, like we usually did. But when we came into the house, within an hour of being home, we would have a small confrontation, then a slight run-in, then a big disagreement. This happened mainly in the lounge room. And I noted that I always felt angry when the TV was on, which is not like me. And when my partner sat in his chair and spoke, I felt really irritated by his voice. I ended up feeling like I may have been imagining what was happening until we had our conversation that afternoon. Once you cleared that chair, I felt the energy restored within the home. The home felt relaxed, it felt calmer, it felt happier. The chair looked lighter and brighter. I felt happier and I actually wanted to do my daily exercise. The children were sleeping better. My angry feelings and contempt and horrible thoughts that were coming up totally disappeared. Now, the following information is what I gathered through my pendulum dowsing about the energetic imprints that were in that chair. And this shows you what people can leave behind in pieces of furniture. Before I continue, I just have to say that having one angry thought and sitting in a chair is not going to leave an energetic imprint. It is a build-up of these emotions that then creates a vibration that chair is pumping out into the environment, and that vibration is what attracts the paranormal beings. So within that green armchair, there were 5 demonic entities that were attached to emotions that had been created by both male and female. Now, this was before my friend had bought this chair. This was at a 5-year period before this chair had been purchased by them. So over that 5 years, there had been an emotional build-up of rage, hostility, hatred, loneliness, humiliation, and sadness that had come from the previous male and female owners of that chair. So that tells me, that emotional build-up of those particular emotions tells me that there were problems in the relationship. People weren't happy, and they just stored their emotions instead of talking about it, instead of seeing a counsellor, instead of talking to the partner and working on solving the problems. They just build up within the person, and then the person sits in the chair absorbs as the person's ruminating internally or even externally, expressing that rage, expressing that hostility and that hatred. The chair absorbs that. The room in the home where that chair used to sit would be full of all those emotions as well. So I hope you found that interesting, and it gets you thinking about how your thoughts and emotions and sleep patterns possibly may change when a piece of furniture comes into your home. So before we get into the second story, if you like the content of this podcast and don't want to miss out on any future episodes, please join me in this movement to educate people about the paranormal by following and sharing with your friends and family to get the message out there about how these paranormal beings can influence us and affect people and their homes. I would really appreciate it. Now we're in for an interesting experience. Oh my gosh, I so love telling these stories. This is one of my personal experiences from 2019, and it was an item that came into my house that was given to me by a friend. So let's have a look at the satanic deck of cards. A friend was having a clean out, and she offered me a small box filled to the brim with decks of cards, both traditional tarot cards and oracle-themed decks. And I graciously accepted this little package, and I was quite excited to be looking through them. It felt a bit like a treasure box full of goodies. Now, I was booked in to do a client house clearing job that day, and I know I get easily distracted. And I thought I'll just have a quick peek in the box before I start work. Now, some of the authors of the decks I knew and some I didn't, and there was one particular card deck that caught my eye. Or these days I would call it set my paranormal radar on high alert. Now, I held this deck very carefully as I examined the cover, and I kind of got a feel for it because I'm very what they call clairsentient, if you want to use a technical term. I feel energy that comes through items, people, places. So I thought I'm just going to handle this deck and just see what I get from it. My hands sort of had a tingly, sort of humming sensation that started to happen when I handled this deck of cards. And as I'm looking at the cover, it was quite plain, with a small amount of writing and a rather unusual red symbol printed in the centre. And as I'm handling this deck, I started to feel a little bit odd. It was almost hypnotising. I felt quite mesmerised by the symbol. And I should have trusted my instinct there and then with this particular deck of cards and removed it from my house instantly. But no. Instead, I just carefully placed it back in the box and stored the carton in the corner of my bedroom. Now, the box, oh my gosh, I'm rolling my eyes. The box and its dark contents just lay there silently, plotting my demise. And one night, soon after, unusual events started happening in my bedroom. There was strange random knocking and cracking sounds in the wall cavities. And I felt like there was a heavy, ominous energy, like a presence, floating around in the dimly lit corner like a heavy mist. And there was a distinct mouldy, rotten egg smell emanating from my bedroom. Now, I'm what I call a paranormal addict, and I will be doing a whole episode talking about paranormal addiction. I found it fascinating to observe these symptoms that were occurring. Instead of dealing with it there and then, like now I would not have left it to go for the long period of time that I did. So I just laughed it all off and assumed that these events were just the usual coming and goings in my house, as they were mimicking typical dark energy signs and symptoms that happen on a regular basis, because my house is a bit like a halfway house. They come, they go, they're transitioning, they're coming here to be cleared and going back out in the environment. I deal with these beings all the time. But what really got my attention and got me doing something about this deck of cards was that my dreams steadily worsened. Over the coming days, they became really hellish, like the worst possible torturous nightmares that you could imagine is what was waking me up many, many times a night. And initially I'm like, is this a house clearing job I've done? Is this a person that I've cleared and there's just a few lurking dark or demonic beings in my home? And I'm like, no, this is something else. This was a level of demonic, satanic intention that I had not dealt with before. So this is all learning for me and I can share with you. So hopefully you're not going to go through the nightmares and the bad smells in your house. You're going to get someone in to check on it earlier than I actually did the clearing in my own home. Now, this is going to sound weird, but I had strangely forgotten, and now I can see that this was a type of paranormally induced brain fog. I'd strangely forgotten about this box and its mysterious contents because it was hidden under things that I'd recently acquired. That was my I'll get to it corner, and I had things piled up there, and this box of cards was on the bottom. So maybe 2 weeks later, I just had strange movement in this room. That's so funny. I'm talking about demonic beings, and here they are, listening to me telling the story. Back to the story, I'm getting sidetracked. Maybe 2 weeks later, I was in decluttering mode and I came across that box. I opened the box and sitting on top was this plainly packaged deck. And Not only now did I feel a bit weird in the stomach or feel like a bit woozy in the head, that I actually had this strange pulsating energy that was coming out of the box as I opened it. Because like I said before, I'm very sensitive to energetic changes in the environment. The energy from this deck of cards was permeating my forehead, and I developed a really strong instant pounding headache. Now, I'm not someone who gets headaches. Just not a thing for me. So it's one of my signs when there are very strong demonic level beings present, is that a headache is one of my symptoms. So as I lifted the deck cover off these cards, now I hadn't got to this stage before. Remember, I'd only just looked at the front of the deck and the back. Now I had to make it worse, is that I started examining the cards. As I'm looking through these cards going, oh my gosh, these symbols, this imagery is horrific. It's awful. Why would you want to put that on a deck of cards? Now, not everyone is this sensitive, but I could tell that some unaware person may buy this deck of cards because it was made by a very well-known occultist who'd been at the practice for decades. And that might be a draw card for a lot of people, but they don't realise what they're getting themselves into. Like I am shaking my hands here as I am telling you this. It's just like, really, why would people buy these cards? No wonder my friend got rid of them. Anyway, my heart was pounding, my heart was palpitating quite rapidly, and I felt really, really sick as I was looking at these cards. Now, this change was a complete shift in my energy as to how I was feeling before I handled the card deck. And I knew that there was something emanating from these cards, and it was about time I dealt with it. Now, at this time, I was part of an online energy clearing group, and we were always sharing things, and I love to educate people about the paranormal and get different perspectives and just see whether it's my brain making things up or whether other people can actually sense the things that I'm feeling or have their own way of sensing it or explaining it. So what I did was I posted a picture of two of the cards from this deck in this online group. And I just wanted to see, I just said to people, look, just have a quick look at them. Tell me what you think. Tell me, what do you pick up about these cards? Now, over the next 2 days, I received confirmation after confirmation from people viewing these two cards, saying that there was something really off about them. Some people who looked at them experienced sleep disturbances and nightmares like they've never ever had before. Some people felt quite fearful. These cards actually triggered fear, paranoia, aggression in some people, which I found really interesting. And other people said that the cards just felt creepy. So I knew that it wasn't my mind creating the disturbing illusions, the feelings that were going on, because I always like to debunk everything. I never ever assume that anything is paranormal until I check out the rational side of things first. So what did I do with these cards? I let the online group know that I was going to delete that post. So it was gone from out of our group. I promptly binned the cards, the cover, the box that they came in. I just had to get rid of them. Like seriously, I was just hoping that this deck of cards would find their way to the bottom of the garbage pile at the local tip and just stay there and compost away, never to be seen again by human eyes. I did consider burning them, but at that time, I actually considered two things. Should I clean them and clear them? And I just got an instant no. It was just like, these cards cannot be cleared because the intention of them is to actually upset people, is to create the fear, create the paranoia, the hatred, the anger. That was the intention of the creator of these cards. Now, if I interfere, I felt that there was some sort of maybe black magic curse spell that was actually attached to this particular deck. Not just this one deck. The thousands of these decks that have been sold would have been created with this intention. But I could at least deal with this one deck and make sure that nobody ever saw them ever again. Now, I consider burning them as well. And I'm like, you know what? I think that's just going to aggravate the paranormal beings in the cards. And I don't want any retaliation. I don't want them getting upset and hanging around my home and causing problems. So what I did, I picked the deck up very respectfully. I spoke to the card deck. Now you're probably going, what the heck is she talking about? Like, seriously, this woman's mad. No, I always work from a level of respect with every energy being. And this card deck contained energy beings. Now, I picked up the deck. I'm walking out to my wheelie bin, which is our rubbish bins here in Australia. And I stood there and I said to this deck, look, I can't have you in my house. You make me feel unwell and I don't want to pass this deck on to any other people. So with respect, I am placing you in my bin to go back to the earth and to be composted. And I didn't have any repercussions after that because my separation from that deck was done very respectfully. I stayed calm. I didn't create any hatred or malice or any negative intentions about that deck. I simply acknowledged the demonic beings that were present within that deck. Now, I was actually glad that deck of cards found its way to me. This happens so often, is that things come to me to be either cleared or removed from the earth realm. And I could dispose of it so the demonic entities couldn't affect another innocent bystander. So in episode 14, we're talking with a dear friend of mine, and she's going to share with you how she recognised and overcame psychic attack that was coming from a not-so-friendly acquaintance of the living kind. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget to send me your paranormal questions and stories you'd like to share with the world. Email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. For information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, and I will leave the web address in the description box for you. I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.